Welcome back, and today we're going to be looking at Troll Hunters, released in 2010 and directed by Andre Overdahl. Now before I do, there's just one thing I need to address. Now I'm fully aware that sometimes my videos are a bit long, and I don't want to spoil things for you guys if you do want to watch it, so I've changed the format a little bit. These reviews will now focus on 4 elements. Number 1, the lowdown. This will be a quick summary of the movie just to give you a flavour of what you're about to experience. Next up, the good. This will highlight what I felt were the best elements of the movie. Number 3, the bad. This will point out the not so good bits of the movie. And finally, number 4, the ugly. This will highlight any area where I would have liked to have seen a bit more development, or where I think there may have been some missed opportunities. Let me know if you like this format, or maybe you preferred how I was doing it before. But for now, let's get into it. This movie was pitched as a horror fantasy and begins by introducing us to 3 Norwegian students. Thomas, the reporter that likes to ask lots of questions but rarely the right ones. Kelly, who, for a cameraman who likes to expose the truth, rarely likes to tell it. And Joanna, the useless sound woman who just pulls this face every 10 minutes. The 3 students are filming a documentary on the recent increase in bear poaching, only to stumble upon something far more exciting. No one can tell me that this guy and the guy from Frozen aren't the same person. I will fight you.
Woohoo! Big summer blowout?
After persevering with several interviews, their line of questioning eventually directs them to the elusive bear poacher, Hans. Oh, they got Smokey! Who's gonna educate children about how to prevent wildfires now? On a serious note, I actually really hate poachers, and I think you're all pieces of So, after stalking Hans across the country, they discover that Hans isn't a bear poacher, but actually he's a troll hunter. And just in case you don't know what that is, he doesn't hunt bears, he hunts. In fact, he is the only troll hunter hired by the Norwegian government. However, Hans's life isn't as exciting as one would think. Hans lives a life of complete isolation. He is pretty much one trailer away from being homeless, and he looks like he stinks. It might sound a little harsh, but to me, it sounds like a fair assessment. I mean, he has troll booty hanging from the roof of his trailer.
Dude, can I get that back? It's a little breezy over here. Thanks.
No. In addition to the poor living conditions, the pay's pretty poor and he doesn't really get many government benefits, which sounds about right. But I think the thing that weighs on him the most is the psychological toll. He's been responsible for the massacre of troll reservations across Norway because it benefits corporations, and that's what he's been told to do by the government.
Hold up.
Oh my god, what is that? I feel like that might be remnants of troll, but I really just don't want to know. Living like that? Ugh. Go forth, Hans. Tell your truth. Using bear poaching as his cover, Hans is also supported by Finn, a TSS bureaucrat that's a troll secret service agent to you, boy, who assists in keeping trolls a secret as a wildlife officer, leaving bear carcasses and planting tracks to throw people off the trail. Turns out he's actually not very good at doing his job, and as a result he's not very happy that these guys are now following Hans around trying to figure out how trolls have been a secret for so long. Finn does initially air his discontent at the situation, but Hans is just stood there like,
Whatever, I'll do what I want.
During the documentary, it's been established that there's been an increase in the number of trolls leaving their territory, and as a result, a number of tourists have disappeared. And surprise, surprise, Hans has to be the one to figure it out. Throughout the movie, we get to see Hans encounter a number of different trolls and see the techniques that he uses to track and kill them. Guys, if you see him running, that might be a good sign for you to do the same. Well, hi, fellas. I'm just looking for some friends. Y'all wanna be friends?
Run.
Where you going, guys? You got any squeaky toys? I got cheese. Throughout the movie, we get to see the various techniques employed by Hans in finding and killing trolls, including UV lights. Yes, give it to me, darling. I want more. Magnifico. Tire chew toys. I got my squeaky toy. Toppled trees, Christian man's blood, a troll favourite, which Calais will show us is a bucket of lies, and my personal favourite, troll stanky stank. Now, that stuff must have some potency, because no offence, I have experienced some Norwegian dishes, but I am genuinely interested to know which part of the body this stank came from, because we've seen what's hanging in his trailer. I'm just saying. Now, in their journey to expose the truth, Thomas has been bitten.
That's a nice muscly throwing on you got there.
And Calais becomes a midnight snack, becoming our only confirmed human kill of the movie after failing to declare his religious ways at check-in. After snagging a blood sample from one of his previous battles, Hans has determined that a Jotner, that's this big fella, has contracted rabies and has run all the trolls out of the reservation while simultaneously spreading it to others, meaning Thomas is now a dirty boy. An epic battle ensues between Hans and the Jotner before he successfully kills the troll and rolls out. The students rejoice in their victory and are eager to get the tapes out to the world to reveal the existence of trolls. But what's this? Oh no, my bro. Here comes the popo ready to step all over your flow. As the TSS arrive to do a cleanup job, Thomas flees and collapses by a truck, where the driver presumably finds the tape, and that's how it ends up in the hands of the press. Following these recorded events, the students disappear without a trace, and the movie ends with the Norwegian Prime Minister admitting the existence of trolls, much to Finn's displeasure. So you might be asking, what about this movie did I enjoy? Well, I'll tell you. So I think the thing I like most about this movie is how it embraces Norwegian heritage and culture. I love that the movie embraces its beautiful scenery, its gorgeous fjords, and if lockdown didn't make you crave a holiday before this, then you definitely will now. I also admire how Norwegian folklore is incorporated thoroughly throughout this movie. The most obvious one linking to the title is the Jotner, or the Trolls of Scandinavia. This movie does a fantastic job at incorporating folklore within a contemporary setting, and my ignorance always led me to believe that a troll was a troll. But the movie actually does a really good job in introducing you to the various types. From what I can tell, it looks like the designs of the trolls in this movie took heavy inspiration from Norwegian artist Theodor Kittelsen and Swedish artist John Barr. Hold on. Wait a minute. And it would make sense that landscape and scenery would feature so heavily in this movie, not just because of the subject, but because these artists love to show the Scandinavian landscape as backdrops to their portraits. For instance, Bauer's favourite subject was Swedish nature. He loved dense forests where the light trickled down through canopies, and as a child he would often wander through dark woods, imagining all the creatures that lived there. So let's see what this movie taught me. So Hans typically described trolls as simply big, dumb and stupid. I like to say intellectually challenged and antisocial. Like this big boy. Now this is the three-headed troll, and although it looks like he has three heads, it turns out those other two are actually protuberances, which are aimed to scare away other trolls, but also turn on the ladies. I also feel like this scene in particular strongly resembles Kittelsen's portrayal of the boy who challenged the troll to an eating contest. But do you think I'm reaching on this one? Let me know down below. Next up, they introduce us to the Regelfant. Now, I couldn't find any imagery that related to Kittelsen or Bauer. However, it does link back to the tale of Billy Goat's Gruff, and is actually the most hilarious scene in all of this movie, and I don't even know if it was intentional. And the thing that made me laugh the most about this scene actually wasn't even in the film. It was a conversation I was playing in my head about what these goats were potentially saying to each other, and it went a little something like this. Introduced to us in the cave scene, the mountain trolls were inspired by John Bauer's painting. However, in his painting they look far more angelic, and I don't think Keller would agree. Next up we have the Jotner. This one is the largest of the troll varieties, and they try to keep this bad boy contained using power lines, but it seems like rabies is super soldier serum for Jotners. The visualization of this particular troll closely resembles Kitterson's painting of the troll wondering how old he is. You can see they've tried to incorporate elements like the fungi and the what looks like trees growing on his back, but he does also look like the creepy old man that lives down the road that definitely hates children and smells like wet dog, and has family but they choose not to visit him because he's actually really mean. And finally we see Thomas reenacting the fairy tale Soria Maria Castle, which is one of the tales that tells about how trolls can smell Christian blood, and is also an infamous painting by Theodore Ketterson based on the same fairy tale. And throughout the movie they make various links back to folklore, but I don't want to bore you any more than I already have, so if there are other relationships that I haven't pointed out in this video, why don't you let me know down below in the comments. Fun fact, the giant in Jack and the Beanstalk, an anglicised troll. So, what bad things could I possibly say about this movie? I mean, I've said so many good things, I can't possibly not like the movie, right? Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy this movie, and a lot of the strong points in the movie do actually work against it. So let's start from the beginning. So this movie uses the found footage style. If you're not entirely sure what I mean, movies like The Blair Witch Project and Cloverfield use this technique. But the mockumentary style works well for them because they use it as a way to generate mystery and suspense. And in this movie, ultimately it works against them because they use so many establishing shots and so much exposition that they end up revealing too much at the beginning, and it just becomes boring. For instance, in their first outing with Hans, the students encounter their first troll. Prior to this scene, the students have taken no interest in what Hans is actually doing. And the scene between the students is so light-hearted that we never actually see any tension built up about what we're about to experience. And by the time they actually see the troll, they've revealed it in its entirety. So as the students are running through the forest, there's no mystery about what's chasing them, what does it look like. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen Bird Box, but that was part of the excitement and the mystery, the fact that we never actually got to see what it was that was hunting people and corrupting them. And even within this scene, at no point did I actually ever feel like they were truly in danger. And so I just didn't care. I think a big part of why this movie was so underwhelming was because there was very little character development. Yes, we could argue, well, we get to hear loads about Hans, and we know that he's a skanky old man that works as a troll hunter and gets very little pay. But that's about all we know about him. We don't know his motivations. Why did he get into troll hunting? Did you get freaky with a troll and she never called back? Did they destroy your family and use their bones to make their bread? What are your motivations? And as for the other characters, they're as exciting as a wet rag, to be honest, and I don't mean the towely kind.
Don't forget to bring a towel!
Calais probably got the best role because he got chomped up halfway, and that was as exciting as it got. In fact, I connected more and felt more sympathy for the Jotner at the end of this movie than I did when Keller died. Throughout these final scenes, I can see this troll suffering. I can see he's confused, I can see he's dazed, and I can see that he doesn't understand what's going on. So it was actually a little heartbreaking when they finally killed him. And the fact that I feel more sympathy for a troll that was probably on my screen for about 10 minutes just goes to demonstrate just how much these characters lack any depth. The comedy in this movie also fell a little flat for me, and considering that they gathered a number of Norway's top comedians, I expected a lot more. Now don't get me wrong, as I mentioned before, there are funny moments, but there are also moments that I laughed at where I wasn't 100% sure whether that was intentionally funny. So after a while I kind of struggled to establish what it was that this movie was trying to achieve, and there were clearly moments where they'd obviously worked very hard to create a funny situation, but the humour just seemed forced and therefore just negated the hilarity they were trying to create. Now I've seen a lot of the reviews, and a lot of viewers have said that a lot of the negative reviews are coming from outsiders, and that's because they don't understand Norwegian heritage, culture and humour. But for someone like me who is a massive world cinema fan, I've seen movies from a number of different backgrounds, and therefore it's given me a better understanding of humour from different perspectives, and this still isn't funny to me. Sorry. I will, however, give an honourable mention to Finn, because the stank eye and side glances that he's constantly giving the students was actually pretty funny, and it was funnier than the entire situation that was being filmed. There are a lot of holes in this movie that I could spend all day going over, but I don't take pride in cracking all over a movie. So like Finn, I'm going to move on to the next bit. So I think the found footage route and the movie certification applied to this movie seriously held this movie back, and I really would have liked to have seen what they could have done if they'd just taken a standard approach to it and just focused more on the story and the challenges rather than trying to focus it around the landscapes and the folklore. While I understand why they're there, I just think they were so dominant that they took over. The distinct lack of gore and the off-screen kill does mean that it justifies that lower rating, which I assume is intentional because it sounds like this movie was directed toward kids. But I do think if they had changed the approach and incorporated those things, this movie would have done a lot better with an international market. I mean, give me something, man. Not every horror movie has to be particularly bloody or gory, and I'm not a big fan of using jump scares. I think it's a very easy thing to do when you get into horror, but there were so many opportunities in this movie for jump scares, and that birdie just flew by like the missed opportunity it was, because we all know the Western market love jump scares. But the biggest letdown, and the thing that I think that needs to be improved the most, is the character development. Overall, this movie just overcompensated with all the Norwegian culture and folklore, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but as I've mentioned before, it just took over, and as a result there was no opportunity for any character development or opportunities for the audience to bond with the characters and establish their motives. So by the time a character died, you were left feeling unbothered. And for a job role that's portrayed as being incredibly dangerous, I never truly got the sense that any of these characters were in imminent danger, even though the intention was there. And with its given rating, I was actually somewhat surprised and underwhelmed when there was an off-screen kill, but the lack of character development just meant that I didn't care. And by focusing on specific areas of the movie, there were actually a few plots within the movie that actually never went anywhere, because I'm guessing they ran out of time. So for instance, Thomas is bitten and he gets rabies, and while there are hints of something being wrong throughout the movie, this doesn't go anywhere, so what was the point in including it? And then there was the vet who is responsible for testing troll samples and ultimately was the one who concluded that these trolls have rabies. There's clearly a relationship between herself and Hans, but we never have the opportunity to figure out the extent of that relationship. So what was the point in introducing that snippet at the end? This movie had great potential, and I would love maybe at some point if somebody remade it from a slightly different perspective, but I guess that remains to be seen. Well guys, that's it from me today. What did you think about the review? Do you think I'm being a bit too harsh? Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and until the next video, avoid men in trailers. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!